Before I got here, I was like, I need to know what KESH is going to wear, what the look is going to be giving. Have you always been the person that people are like, what's she going to wear?
I think that's always been a way for me since school, probably. I've definitely expressed myself through my clothing since a young age, for
From a
sure.
young age. And did that come from your parents? Like, where did that come from?
It's hard because my parents they're not really extroverted in that way. So for me, I think it's just a natural expression and just something that came through like exploration and just, living within my own skin and experiencing the world in the way that I did.
Yes. Well, you grew up in Croydon.
Yes.
Tell me about the beauty culture there. What was your early life like?
I think for me, the beauty culture in Croydon, it varies so much because there's so many different communities. It's a very
Mhm.
multicultural space. So I think it's hard to like pinpoint one kind of like identity of it. But for me, I think Croydon culture has influences of like very much like Jamaican culture and
Mhm.
Indian culture, Pakistani culture, Eastern European culture, traditional British culture, like all mixed together to like just create one kind of blended, like coexisted expression. So I think for me, that's what it was growing up. And you kind of pull from your own family history and your own kind of like cultures and then blend it in with what was happening in England at that time. So
Yeah.
it was a little bit of like a rude girl expression, is what we like to call it, which really has like a lot of roots within like Jamaican culture. So like slick back baby hair, like tracksuits that can come from like anywhere from, British like football culture to kind of Eastern European working culture. And I think just blending all of those together creates this very like distinctive British look. And
Yeah.
that's what I was doing growing up.
Is there anything that I would know from Croydon, like any people or like I'm trying to like imagine it. Like are there any signifiers or people from that area that I would
Well,
know?
the two people that come from Croydon or from South London, Croydon's just next to South London, is Naomi Campbell
Oh, yes, of
and
course.
Kate Moss.
Oh,
So two
okay.
of the biggest supermodels in the
Supermodels.
world
What's
are
in the water
from.
over
I
there?
know, I wonder, right? So both of them, I believe, are from. I believe Kate's from Croydon, and I believe Naomi's from South London. So it's
Interesting.
interesting. I think those for me were two pretty big beauty icons growing up, knowing
Yes.
that they just came from like 15 minutes away from where I'm from.
Yes. So you're a teenager, you're figuring out your self-expression and how you want to self-present.
Hmm.
What about that process was empowering and what about that process was frustrating at times?
I think growing up in a place like England as a young black/brown girl, I think there was frustrations in that space because you're not necessarily appreciated for who you are fully. You're
Mm,
facing a lot of obstacles just in your daily experience, and it's kind of harder to find your truth in that space when you're constantly up against kind of these negative experiences that make you question, your beauty and your identity and your sense of self.
mm.
So I think it was really hard to kind of navigate within those landscapes at first, but from all of those experiences of pain there comes so much beauty as well, and it allows you to kind of defy what is expected of you because you're kind of existing within your own space.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I was able to experiment a lot more and kind of find the version of myself that made the most sense for me because of, those experiences.
Yeah. Now, you are an artist,
Yes.
first and foremost, and that
Mhm.
art takes various forms: visual art, design, music, of course.
Mhm.
Have you always identified as an artist? Have you ever had a boring corporate job?
I had two jobs.
Really? Tell me about you working a job. I'm so curious to know what the jobs were.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I was 16 years old. I was plotting to leave my town because I'd had enough and I needed to get out. But the only way I could get out was if I had money to do so. So I eventually said, fine, I'll get a job. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it. And in my town, it's a small town, there weren't very many opportunities. My first job, I was a cleaner.
Oh, wow.
I used to be a cleaner for a gym. So every day after school, I'd finish school at 3:35, go home, I'd watch Dragon Ball Z for 15 minutes, I'd amp myself up and be like, okay, I'm going to go clean this gym. And I'd go to the gym and I'd work my 3-hour shift and I would clean. And it's funny because, like, I'm really not that great at cleaning, actually.
I was
I'm
gonna
not.
ask, are you good at cleaning?
No, not really. I like don't like to do it, but obviously you have to do it. But
Right.
yeah, for a job, I was cleaning this gym and I would clean the lockers, I'd clean the bathrooms, I'd clean the toilets, I'd clean. I know, it was like, to think back on it, it's quite funny, but I was cleaning this gym and I was cleaning it with such intention of being like, this is my way out. And it was like, I think it was worse than minimum wage at this point. So it's like the money that I was actually saving, I don't know where I thought it was going to get me, but I did end up doing that job. My first job, I was a cleaner. Then I got fired because I wasn't a good cleaner. And I wasn't mad. And then I went on to work at a company where I had to sell windows. Like, I know, it's so random. I was like at the call center basically, and there was like 20 people at a table, cold calling people, trying to convince them to like buy windows for their house. Obviously, I was terrible at that. That was the worst pay I've ever had, but you would get a commission if you could get like a lead or get someone to like, like buy a new set of windows for their house. I didn't make one sale. It's awful. I couldn't do it. I couldn't like commit. I couldn't like commit to like fake selling, So
Of course, yeah.
those are my two jobs at 16 years old. And then at that point I realized, wow, I cannot do this. This is like not for me. I gotta get out. I was already side hustling by like drawing people's names on their clothes in school and like.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, in school we wear in England we wear school uniforms, so we would have like blazers with collars, and after school, we thought it was so cool. You like pop your collar after school and like walk home, and I would like graffiti people's names on the back of their collars and things like that for money. So
that's cool.
I already had like the two experiences of like, I'm making money like this and I'm making money like this. Which way do I really want to do it?
Right. And I want to make money through my creativity.
Yeah. So I was like, this stuff's not for me. Like, I'm going to go this way. And then, through kind of a chain of events, I got myself to London. And then that's how I started to like exist and make money and support myself.
And really get into the creative community.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this whole time, what are your parents? Are they encouraging you to do this?
Yeah, I'm really lucky actually. Like, my parents are immigrants. The parents that raised me are from Trinidad in the Caribbean and then Malaysia. So
because you were adopted, correct?
Yes, so I was adopted at like age 4. My mom and dad, who I consider to be my mom and dad, in those cultures, it is very much the norm for your parents, especially immigrant parents, to want you to have like a stable job, like a guaranteed job. Like if you go and you study at medical school or, to be a lawyer or an accountant or any of these things, you're almost, if you can pass, then you're guaranteed to have a job, right? So it's more of like a guaranteed job. But my parents, my mother worked in the medical field. She's a midwife, and my dad worked within, accounting and financial advising and things like that. So it's like both of those jobs they had to study for and go through the system, and they had really, really hard challenges and hard lives to get to where they were. And I was lucky enough for them to not put too much pressure on me.
That's a beautiful thing. Yeah,
I'm really, really lucky for that. There's not much that they could offer me in terms of, me and my mum were talking about this the other day. She was like, there wasn't much we could give you in terms of your career choice, but we always have, believed in you in some way. They knew I was an artistic child and a creative child, so they kind of just stood back and said, whatever's going to happen is going to happen.